Hey, welcome to CEO Money. I'm Michael Yorba. Thanks for joining us. My guest is Tony Ibarguen, CEO of Quench. Tony, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Michael. Pleasure to be with you.
All right, let's talk about your company for a minute. Despite the boom in healthcare and wellness and the clean eating craze sweeping the nation, break us through the processes that you developed to come into your company and what you're doing to be a disruptive force in your industry sector.
Yeah, well, health and wellness is a big deal these days. In fact, we conducted a survey. I had about 1,000 respondents from around the country to try to understand what the water drinking habits were across corporate America, since at Quench we have about 40,000 customers that utilize our services to provide clean water for offices and industrial users around the country. And that survey showed us some interesting results where 77% of the respondents said that they weren't drinking enough water during the day. And that's kind of puzzling if you think about it, because water is essential to health, certainly essential to productivity, mental acuity, and people seem to be drinking more and more water as opposed to soda or sugary drinks. And so we decided it was worth digging into as a topic.
Okay. Your company, explain what it does to our audience.
Sure. Well, Quench is part of a public New York Stock Exchange listed company called Aquaventure Holdings. One part of the business called Seven Seas Water does water desalination plants in the Caribbean and South America, taking seawater and converting it to drinkable water for populations and industries in that part of the world. And Quench has 100,000 water coolers or ice machines that we provide filtered, clean, cold, and hot water and ice, coffee, sparkling water, and other services to businesses, about 40,000 customers, pretty much in every state and increasingly now in Canada. So our service is to outsource that for our customers. They don't have to worry about maintaining or taking care of the machine or changing the filter. We do that. It's great peace of mind. It's hassle-free. It's continuous, free-flowing water for free, essentially, and for a very nominal cost, a few dollars per month per employee for the employer. And this is instead of using either tap water, which people are increasingly, as our survey showed, concerned about, afraid of, or bottled water because of concerns related to the sustainability of that plastic 5-gallon jug.
All right, talk to me about the reason for the survey. There had to be some, beyond just trying to figure out who's drinking and who isn't, there's got to be a financial reason for that, and why employers should care about their employees drinking better water, or more of it.
Yeah, we'd heard from many of our customers that the use of the machine, the use of the drinking of water had increased dramatically since the installation of one of our units. And so we thought it would be useful to understand what is it that's driving the habits of corporate America in terms of drinking water. We read all those same trends you cited of health and wellness. We understand that corporate America is spending about $8 billion a year in corporate wellness programs. And so this seemed like it would fit in. And as I mentioned earlier, found that the majority of the respondents said that they didn't feel like they were drinking enough water every day during the day at work. And so obviously from our standpoint, to the extent that the use of our service will enhance corporate wellness and productivity, that it gives a justification for employers to go ahead and invest a little bit of money in providing this free service to their employees. In return for presumably significant productivity boost as a result of increased wellness and overall health. And so that was our motivation for conducting the survey.
Tell me about the difference between what they used to drink and what they drink after they employ your services or your products.
Yeah. There's 20-some million small businesses across the country that might have some kind of a water cooler or use tap water or refrigerator water or buy small form bottled water from the supermarket. There's one study that we have that says there's about 6 million water coolers themselves, the classic 5-gallon jug water cooler around the country, and only about 1.5 million of the type of unit that we sell. It's a self-standing a bottleless filtration unit that has a filter, a high quality carbon block or reverse osmosis filter inside the machine that on demand at the push of a button will filter water and ensure that it's clean on the spot. So whatever was happening in the distribution system from your municipal water supply through the spigot that it's coming out of in your kitchen or in whatever location and bathroom, we're going to then filter it one last time to ensure that it's clean. So it provides an added security and enhancement in terms of a health benefit of making sure that's really clean, highly filtered water. But it also chills it, it heats it. We can make it sparkling with the CO2. We can add flavors to it. We can turn it into ice, and we can turn it into coffee. And so rather than the alternative really for filtered water is to purchase 5-gallon jugs. Those require a delivery person in a big fuel-consuming truck, we all know, with a hand cart to come in and out of your building, which in larger cities is a security issue and a timing problem. You have to have storage for empty bottles. Nobody loves to be the person who's lifting the 42-gallon jug. I don't know, Michael, what you have in your office, but
right.
In many of my talks, that often gets a rise out of the audience. Nobody wants to be that last person with the last glug, glug, glug of the 5-gallon jug. And so they find it hassle-free. And from a cost standpoint, like I said, it's a few dollars per employee per month. So at about 10 to 15 employees, you could actually save money with a point of use, we call it, or bottleless filtration station.
Why aren't people drinking more water at work? What's the, we'll say?
Yeah, that's the subject of the survey. About a quarter of them said that they were drinking enough. About 3/4 said they weren't. And when you dig into it, some of it has to do with not trusting the water, not liking the taste of the water. It wasn't easy to access the water. They didn't have time during their workday to access the water. Some of them said that they weren't thirsty. And so when you dig into it and we do some health studies around it, thirst isn't necessarily the only indicator of what you should be drinking. You should be hydrating all day long. The American Medical Association says you should drink about a half a gallon of water or 8-ounce cups per day. And that should be continuous and throughout. Increasingly, millennials coming into the workforce are used to a university environment or school environment where they have had their sports bottles with them at all times. And so they want to have 16 or 20 ounces of good, clean water with them at all times. And they're probably hydrating better than the average worker. But when we tie it back to what we can do to help and what we have done to help so many customers, a lot of it has to do with making the water accessible, putting it in locations around the office space or the warehouse, the industrial site, so that within a few walking feet, you can get to a place where you can get clean and cold water. That is something that's very conveniently and easily done in our service. We can run lines as much as 500 feet away from the water source. So there's virtually no location that we can't put one of these coolers. And by doing things like that, employers can benefit by increasing goodwill of their employees, knowing that that's a relatively inexpensive but free and appreciated service. And then if you attach to that an ice machine, that tends to significantly increase satisfaction as well.
Good. I can see why it would be. Tell us about the business model, the market penetration, plans for the future with your company.
Yeah, thanks. So we went public in October of 2016, raised about $125 million, which we've been putting to work to grow both organically as well as through acquisition. Acquisition growth is a big part of our future, particularly on the Quench side here in the U.S. and in Canada. It's a highly fragmented, competitive market. There are hundreds of small mom and pop dealers around the country. We've made 7 acquisitions in the last 12 months, 18 in the last several years, of smaller regional competitors that we have then aggregated onto our common backbone and platform to create really the only national services provider in this sector. And that's making us more interesting as a partner for larger corporate entities who are realizing that they're spending a lot of money on water around the country, and also who, as part of this $8 billion they're spending on corporate wellness, can enhance the productivity and wellness of their employees. So our business model is to continue to grow both organically and inorganically. It's a an attractive, high margin, recurring revenue business. It does take a lot of capital to grow the business. We've been at this about 8 or 10 years. And that was the essence of the IPO, was to be able to raise capital and continue to grow for our shareholders.
Domestic or international markets, let's address that.
Yeah, right now it's primarily U.S. We've made 2 acquisitions in Canada in the last year, in Vancouver and Calgary in February of this year, and in Toronto in June of last year. We're continuing to look to Canada as a growth market. There's potential down in Mexico as well, which is an adjacent market that we think we can get some synergy out of. The overall business in Europe is a little bit more mature, actually. They were earlier adopters of this bottleless filtration cooler system than the U.S. has been. And that's somewhat understandable. There's a density of movement. It's harder for trucks to get around with 5-gallon jugs. More of a sustainability and green orientation in certain countries in Europe that have pushed for a better, more efficient, more sustainable solution, which ours is. And from a cost standpoint, it's a little bit more expensive to bottle and deliver that water, so the break even is a little bit lower. And so they've had a higher penetration. They're at about 50% of these filtration units and 50% of the 5-gallon jugs. Where in the US, it's about 20% of the filtration and 80% 5-gallon jugs.
What about Asia, Africa, and Latin America? Because I wonder how that's working for you.
A little more familiar with Latin America. We have partners down there, and we know some folks really well down there. And that's a growing opportunity down there. The water in different places is not the same as here in the U.S. And so people are more accustomed to bottled water to begin with. And if you think about it, it's really a growing trend to be used to the taste of filtered water and bottled water here in the U.S. And our systems are really the next technological evolution of filtered water. And that's happened also slowly but surely in Latin America. Asia, we have some great partners in China and South Korea. And those markets have also adopted this technology quite significantly. I know of a company in Israel, for example, that sold about 1 million units into residential applications in Israel for apartments, where it's become essentially part of every new apartment is to have a countertop filtration unit that does cold water and sparkling water. So this is something that the U.S. has been a little bit lagging on, and we see a lot of growth for us right here. Again, in a multi-million unit universe that we're targeting in the U.S., we're at about 100,000 installed rental units at the moment that we own. So we see a lot of potential growth here, and that should last us for years to come.
Okay, that's wonderful. The symbol on the company that you're working with that is helping you with the IPO?
Yes, where our IPO was on the New York Stock Exchange, and our ticker symbol is WAAS, which stands for Water as a Service, WAS.
Great, I love it. All right, Tony, thanks for being a guest on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. You've been watching CEO Money with Michael Yorba.